Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session, and today it's open mic night, which means it's your chance to ask me any question you like and see whether or not I can help you on your property development journey. Now, in order to do that, if you click on the link below, propdev.info/open-mic, you will submit the question in advance, and that gives me an opportunity to do any preparation work that I might need in order to I guess get ready for this session. Now, that said, we've got a cracking show. Uh, so very first question comes from Susie. Susie says, "Hey, I'm just a beginner. Been looking. I've been looking at this land sale, but the figures just don't quite work. They're only about 9%. It's recently passed it, and they're seeking offers after the auction, and they've decided to go to auction again. It's already been DA. It's a short walk from the water. It's next door to an old housing commission unit. In the next few years, we'll have a hotel and other retail shops. Do you have any suggestions on how I might move forward on this property, or should I just walk away? So she's included a link to the property, but we're not going to go to there and steal her deal. But Susie, let me tell you that if your deal is only to argue that he should proceed at that price point. But the danger here is, if you can legally hold him to a contract, you're putting him right at the very, very start, which isn't for relationships, and it's not going to be good for his cash flow. And it means that if anything else goes wrong in the deal, you are in danger of tipping him over. So in this particular instance, be having a open and frank conversation with them, seeing if they can actually open book, actually demonstrate the real world real world cost increases and that sort of thing are unreasonable. I guess in this particular instance, while you might be able to hold them over a barrel, it's not going to serve you in the long run. And what having a good conversation is going to do is set up the relationship so that during the project, when other things are, then they know that you're going to work fair and reasonably with them. I'm going to try and hold you over a barrel when circumstances get tough. A bit. Next question comes from Juanita. Juanita says, can I build a single? I like the idea of a double-story manor house in New South Wales, but I believe it needs to be a Class 3 building due to fire protection being twist and second floor. But what if we did the same concept, but all on the ground floor within a size limit like the 300 square meter rooming house? That way, 4 joined units with fire protection, etc. between each unit. Is this a good idea or not? So firstly, let's definition of what is a manor house. As you've rightly pointed out, Juanita, this is a, I guess, term. It's a hybrid. It looks and feels like a house. Only it actually works at 2 apartments on the ground floor, 2 apartments on the second floor. Now you are Class 3 building. No, it's actually Class 2 building, which means that you need to have fire separation between, I guess, the ceiling and the floor, and you also need to have fire separation between the 2 adjacent units. So both axes of the dwelling are going to need some fire. Now the challenge with that is that being a Class 2 dwelling makes it expensive to construct. And one of the things that you would know if you follow the New South Wales, designs, you'll see that not many manor houses are getting across the line. Commercially, they don't make sense. Now, what you've proposed here is, doing them on the ground floor and having that horizontal section between them. But in this particular instance, if you're actually going to be doing that and putting 4 dwellings in there, then in Victoria, you can build, a rooming product where you can dwellings and not have any of the complications of that. As a matter of fact, it's if you have a development building approval in situations like. So I think, commercially not Class 2 dwelling with only 4 apartments in it, and 2, if you are going to keep the floor, then there is a better dwelling structure, which is a base 9-bedroom house or below in Victoria. Now, note those numbers for everyone else in other states are very, very, very different, but there are going to be some issues to be a Class 1 dwelling, which means that you have to have fire compliance and evacuation signs and access and a whole bunch of other things. But is way more cost effective to actually just do this as a standard rooming house type build, if that's what. Hoping that helps. Next question goes to Hua. Hua says, excuse me, folks. Let's say it's going to take 12 months, which I've been advised by my town planner. How do I evaluate the block of land in 12 to 24 months' time? If I decide to build houses on the new blocks, how do I work out in that period? It's a very interesting question, Hua, and I understand why you're asking the question, but here's the challenge, okay? Our job is to prove to the funder, and I guess the funder gets their information from the valuer, that we can build the product in today's market. So I'm going to buy it in today's market and sell it in today's market. A valuer can't predict to, and so I guess that from that side of things, you have to prove the financial viability. That said, you then still have to account for whether or not you think the market is up or the market is going to go down. Now, what I would highly encourage you to do is to go to the series that I've presented many times in the past called Over the Horizon, where I talk about the 16 drivers that are actually driving the market at any one point in time. And that is how what I think is going to be the future. And that's how you're going to risk mitigate it. So if you think the market is going to go up, then on this perspective, everything is good. If you think the market is going to go down, then you want to understand, how do I stress test 5%? Is it going to go 10%? What point fees a break? If you genuinely think that the market is going to go down, then if it did actually do that, could you live with the consequences? You might be able to prove in today's market the deal makes sense, but if it does drop, say 5%, could you live with the consequences? You'll still be in the black, but it won't be excuse me, we're near the profits that you were anticipating. And so for some people, that's a deal breaker. For other people, they are willing to live with the risk. But that's effectively what you do. You prove to the bank in today's dollars that the deal makes sense, and then to use those 16 market drivers that I teach you all about that then tell you whether or not you think the market is going to go up, down, or sideways. You apply that risk profile to the deal, and then ask yourself, can I live with the consequences? Hoping that helps. Next comes from Katie. Katie says, I've been following you for years. Thank you for your knowledge and for your share. You're more than welcome. I'm also the founder of an affordable housing development group. Recently, we tendered for over 110 homes to the government and cuts under option while we await final signed contracts, which we've been advised are expected this month. We're now looking to bring capital partners for upcoming. Has extensive experience with over 700 million plus in development delivery. I thought I'd reach anyone in your community who may be interested in participating in projects as a funding partner. Thanks again for everything. It's been, incredibly valuable. You're more than welcome, Katie. But here's the thing. When you are raising capital, in circumstances like this, there's a couple of prerequisites that need to go in. Firstly, you need to be aware of your obligations under ASIC legislation, and that is, and certainly for the size that you are doing, you almost require an AFSL license, an Australian Financial Services license. And that means that you firstly need to get the license, and that license is typically done on a per project basis. Can be done as an entire funded pool, but that's more when you've kind of graduated into more senior type projects and more senior licensing requirements. But typically you're going to raise per project basis, and depending upon the kind of license that you get, then you may be restricted in who you can actually raise capital from. So there are a number of different kinds of investors. There is retail investors, and there are wholesale investors. Now, if you are trying to reach out to my community, then there is a lot of retail investors there. Now, investors are a protected species. ASIC want to humanly possible, and so there's a lot for you to do in order to get the AFSL license. There's a lot for you to comply and make these in the approval. And it also means that you cannot legally promote to the community. I cannot community if on your behalf the fact that you don't have the license and I have the license as a project. I would love to help you on your behalf. And even then, even if you got that AFSL license, I am not legally allowed to advertise, because otherwise that looks like what is called a managed. I'm not allowed to do that. So I wish once you actually get your AFSL license, then you will be legally allowed to advertise. So you can, I guess, marketing platforms, social media, and the like to, I guess, generate, I guess, your client base. But you will need to validate what kind of investor they are that is suitable for the appropriate license level that you've been able to obtain. Hoping that helps, Katie, point you in the right direction. Specializes in raising capital. Next question comes from Nikki. Nikki says, we went for an inspection on a large property yesterday at a certain price point. After the meeting, the price point has now increased another $700,000. I have a feeling that the agent has relayed to the vendor that we want to develop the property. The question is, can I ask the agent to sign a non-disclosure agreement when looking at properties for development? Thank you in advance. This is an interesting one, Nikki, and quite tricky, to be brutally honest, because actually representing the vendor and not representing you get the best price humanly possible. And so there's not much you can do with regards to, I guess, getting them and not disclose information to their vendor, because they've had an agreement and an agency agreement with the vendor saying that they are going to do everything within their power to get the best price they can. Now, that said, it's pretty dodgy that they've actually raised the price by that price, and that clearly means that they didn't understand the property correctly, or absolutely no idea what it actually takes to be a property way, and so just making up random numbers on the fly. Either way, this doesn't sound like a sophisticated agent that I'd be wanting to build a long-term working relationship with, and I would very politely say thank you for your time, but in this particular instance, the deal doesn't make sense. It barely made sense at the price point that you gave it to me in the first place. You 700K means I don't even waste my time, and just kind of put it back onto that kind of behavior is not going to work here, because if you start chasing, then they're going to start to think that is going to work, and they might even ratchet the price a second again. So I would just comes from Eric. Effectively, he's done developments in Victoria, and he's also trying to do, and both of them in this instance are a 1:2 decision, and he's now being quoted some extraordinarily high prices in Queensland, in comparison to Victoria. So previously in Victoria, he did his 1:2 decision for around 120,000, but now he's getting quotes in Queensland for between 160 and 220,000, with all this is planned ceiling. Why the difference between the two? Now, there's a couple of reasons. Commonly, it comes down to, I guess, the stats that each state is actually charging. In this particular instance, Queensland is higher, both from an application fee perspective and also what council calls infrastructure charges, but the rest of the country calls council contribution tax, that they charge you for the privilege of actually building the dwelling. Now, the fees and charges in are extraordinarily high compared to the rest of the country for a project as simple as this, and where services are, I guess, already an infill development, I strongly believe that they are overpriced, which is represented by exactly what you're saying. If the deal still makes money, then the deal is still a deal. We can't change with regards to legislation other than giving them feedback that, hey, the deal doesn't make sense over here. It makes sense somewhere else in another jurisdiction. And if enough people say that enough times, then slowly, the message might get through, and they may actually change things. But what I would say, Victoria might be a little bit lower on these particular fees and charges. Victoria as a whole, of additional taxes, fees and charges that apply in many, many other instances. And so you're going to find that swings and roundabouts in and around the two different states are going to mean that there are, I guess, a significant, I guess things will balance out in the, but I'm in agreement with you. The council contribution fees in Queensland are way too high. Next comes from Christine. Christine says, "What's the best council to find house and subdivision projects in Queensland?" Christine, love the fact that you've just been bold and asked me the question. But here's the thing: let's just say I rubbed my crystal ball and I had all the answers that you actually told you. Then everybody that. And then tomorrow morning, body in town is going to race towards that particular suburb and they're going to blow that area up. Okay. And so you're going to find that that is probably not the right way to do it. The that also, even if I did do that, when the area blew up, even if they didn't blow up straight away, if it blew up at some point in time, if you didn't understand how and where the market moves and why it moves and that sort of thing, did move, you wouldn't notice that it had moved, and so you'd still be farming in the same area. The market has moved on, the deals don't make sense anymore. What I've seen is you actually start to do a little bit of I guess, in around how to actually understand and read how the market actually works. Yeah, when you understand how the market works, is it so that happens in every single suburb, no developments, no developments. Okay, and so when we can see what's happening and where we are, then as we go into the on the way up, everybody's making money. On the way, project as quick as they can before they lose their shirt. So by understanding to read the market, we're going to see whether or not we're too because there's no evidence of anybody else in there, or whether or not we're standing and we're absolutely going to lose our something that I do. There is a free course that we run the 7-step formula to financial freedom. And whilst I don't break this down into every single step, what I do is give insights into the things that you need to worry about in putting that together. So that's a very, very worthwhile course doing if you've not done anything in property development, just to give you the insights in the things you want to be thinking about. So hoping that helps. Next question comes from Daniel. Daniel says, I'm a first-time land developer. Etc. Is this the right time to move into a country packed into this particular project? So if it's a feasible project, you've said first-time developer. First-timer means likely to be job, likely to make a few mistakes along the way, and a 41 lot sure, because otherwise you become your own competitor. Stage one, where you release 10 lots, another stage where you release another 10, etc., along the way, as an example, and you can drip feed this project out over many years. Now, what I would encourage you to do of council, but if you did a Google search that said population of, and insert the name of your council, and that will give you a number. Let's just say it's because it's a small regional town, okay? Then the next Google search is going to be population growth rate. Live in a home in the same home. So when you actually divide that up, that means that you're only creating of them in one hit. Won't work. Just means that if there's other people having the same idea, that you could ever considering taking that on. I've invested in property since the early 80s and have been great until recently, due to bad financial advice and legal advice, where I've get a deal like that done. And so from that perspective, you probably don't need a particular project. Although if you did, then it might mean that you might be able to make your money go further. And because you can make it go further, you might be able to run multiple deals. Then my guidance here would be somewhat different. Okay. There are going to be a lot of developers out there that have got the board and have experience in how to run projects, or alternatively, first-time developers that have put the effort in to learn the process in order to de-risk themselves. Now, both of them would be worth, as a matter of fact, a lot of people coming in here are first-timers, and everyone has to do deal number one. So everyone is worthy of consideration from an investment perspective. But because you've not done development before, here's the risk, okay? you put a little bit of education into yourself to actually understand how to assess. Now, assessing a deal really comes down to understanding market dynamics. What should I buy it for? What should I sell it for? And assessment, what are the issues, challenges? And if you can get a list of all those problems, a cost to allocate against every single one of those, and then the feasibility is really the adding of some someone else's deal. And equally, if you are going to run your own deal, you're going to need the same level of skills anyway. So that 7-step formula to financial freedom, that's not going to tell you everything, but it's going to give you the framework that you need to sit behind that. And if you're genuinely wanting to learn how to do that, we also run a 12-month education and mentoring program. It's called Property Development Formula. Go to our website and check out that. If that's of interest, reach out to my team. We can have a chat to you and point you in the right direction. Okay. Next question, Sue. Sue says, I have a development site that can build 6 houses. The vendor has given us time. The lenders will allow us to build up to 4 in one line. Are there lenders who will do 5 or 6 widths, etc.? So, Sue, now what you've really touched on there is that you're doing residential lending, which is why you're capped at 4. So they're typically going to be looking at the serviceability of yourself. Whereas when you're looking to do larger projects, so 4, 5, 6 and beyond, they're not looking at your serviceability anymore, but rather they're looking at your profitability. Does the deal make sense? And if the deal makes sense, then they go, have you got the experience to run that deal? Have you done that kind of deal before? Doesn't matter if you've not done it before, then you're some projects before and you're stepping up, then they're going to say that's okay. Or if you're doing your very, very first project, they're going to go, is that project too big a step for your very first project? Do you need to have a development manager or a project manager sitting beside you to try and help you on your journey? Now, once they understand that, then they're going to want equity. So social lending's terms is what in the residential world you would call a deposit, but equity in this instance is typically going to 30%, position. It'd be a 70% loan to value ratio, but depending upon the deal, that might go down to a 60%, because they're looking at the short-term. That then almost certainly the bank is going to be mandating that you must do pre-sales in order to mitigate the risk. Now, if you're doing pre-sales, that means you have to sell off the plan. So there's a little bit more involved from a legal processing, but it also means that you're selling the potential future project. Typically, your price point selling because the valuers are going to be conservative and the purchasers are going to be conservative because they don't know, one, are you going to build exactly what you promised, and 2, what's the timeline it's going to take to get you locking that money out for a period of time. So generally, if you're selling off the plan, you will sell that for a little bit of a discount compared to. Question comes from side by side for a 637 square meter. The frontage is only 16 meters wide. I spoke to the surveyor, but he said that it has to be 19 meters wide. He said I might be better off to sell the whole project. Don't agree. I also need a drawing and building concepts to present it to council. What's your thoughts about this? Now, Manita, this is a super important fact, okay, you've gone and sought professional advice. I'd also be seeking advice from a town planner, but they've mean you need 19 meters. Now, if the rules say you need 19 meters, then that is a certainty in getting the outcome. Anything less than 19 meters, and in your instance, you're saying 16, that is a significant short 19 that council is searching for. So the likelihood of you getting that across the line is very, very, very low, but not impossible. What evidence that someone else has done what you've done, and for you, I guess, a genuine what they call solution, so justification to council as to why your project is an exception to their 19-meter wide rule. Okay, now council are going to be very conservative. They've got a 19-meter wide rule. They're going to try to defend that. They need to be seen to be defending that. So this is not going to be an easy pathway for sure, given the disparity between 16 meters and 19 meters is so wide. So I would be extraordinarily careful here to make sure that you're not spending I guess good money chasing. Okay, so my first guidance here is go talk to a town planner. They are going to know for sure what the rules, and a town planner specifically that's got experience in the council you're actually dealing with, so they understand the likelihood of that some leniency or flexibility in around this particular issue. So hoping that helps, Nanita. Okay, next question comes from Steve. In a driveway, I'm considering purchasing property with a very large block of land with the potential to develop in the future and building 2 homes side by side. However, I've noticed that the fire hydrant is located in the nature strip, exempted the driveway to go. Can a driveway still be location, or will the hydrant need to be relocated? Steve, that's a really simple one. 99% of the time, then your utility owns the fire hydrant, will deem not a trafficable object. For that reason, that you will need to relocate that. Now, they're not extraordinarily expensive, depending upon the kind of hydrant, the pressure in the lines, and a couple of other things like that. But it might only be a couple of thousand. It's not typically going to be a deal in your particular instance. You do need to speak to your civil engineer and make sure that that is actually going to be the case. It's going to be supportive of those sort of things. But generally, they're actually quite understanding in this realm, because they understand that development. And so long as you're bearing the cost, they won't necessarily be and cost to the process. But I would be budgeting, let's check, if 5K is breaking your deal, it's probably wise. Hoping that helps. Next question comes from Andrew. Andrew says, I'm currently in developments and have noted that a neighbouring property has a development application for a 90-place centre. Concern is whether this type of adjacent could affect marketability or resale values. What are your thoughts? Well, Andrew, as you've not said what your development is, it's very hard to tell whether an adjacent use like that to be, I guess, dragged down or lifting it up. Okay. Now, what I would say about a childcare centre, whilst it could be a little bit noisy, I guess, during the hours of operation, the hours of operation are generally going in and around business hours. And so, and if you're working from home, that could be problematic. But if you're heading out for the day and you're going to work and then you're coming home, then chances are all of that noise and ruckus and those sorts of things are going to be happening outside of hours. So a generally not a huge impact. A couple of people want to go there, possibly. So it means that you might not have as many interested parties in your particular project or your finished project property, but it does not mean, I guess, that it would automatically eliminate it. Okay. Now, if your adjacent use happen to be a service station, service stations right beside these, bad. That's not going to be very good for you at all. Okay. So depending upon the kind of thing, it may have a big impact or absolutely no impact or just a tiny impact. Either way, I wouldn't be stressing too much about it. It sounds like you're doing a residential development, and most of the noise is going to be okay. Lucky last question is Rebecca. A new subdivision and planning on multi units. Can I submit the DA to with the approved registration? Okay, so I'm just going to replay this for everybody else to understand. There is a previous developer doing a land subdivision who are buying off the plan of that land subdivision. So you've got a block of land that has not yet got titles, and you're wanting to develop that into multi-units or townhouses or duplexes at some point in the future. Now, in theory, there is nothing subject to the previous development application being lodged. Now, when I say that, it is very individual council, and not every actually accepts that outcome. But what you would say is the application number or the approval number of the previous project, subject to further develop that into this outcome. Okay, I would be talking to your town guidance and advice on that outcome, but I've seen that done many times in many councils. Not many of them will actually push back on it. It's interesting that a lot of town planners I guess not wanting to lodge until there is certainty, because it does create a lot of extra work for themselves with back and forths and that sort of thing, and so they may give you a little bit of resistance. Hold your ground, be a little bit firm to say, look, I'm aware can be done in a lot of instances. Can you, this specific council is supportive of that. Now, if you've enjoyed today, then not only do we run these Sunday sessions, but we also run meetup events all around the country. We run them in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and now Perth. We've gone live in Perth on these, and I guess would love to see you at one of those. Not only do we run them physically, so you can turn up in your local jurisdiction, but we also live stream them. So no matter where you're located, you will be able to, I guess, so right in the country, especially for an annual member. If you're an annual member, you can dial into every single one of them, 55 events per year. That said, folks, hope to see you at one of our upcoming meetups. We'll see you real soon. Bye for now. Bye.